This podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. Our friends over at SeatGeek are giving us a promo code of TBA Wrestling. That is TBA Wrestling for $20 off your first purchase. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to Gunners Rust Podcast, where we are positively Arsenal, and that we are. Firstly, I need to apologise off the get-go for Monday. I missed Monday. It's the first time I've missed a scheduled Gunners R Us in 4 years we've done it. So apologies to anyone that was waiting for that on a Monday. I think of any time to miss one, and you know it's not going to happen often, if ever again, I think that's the week. And I've listened to Ask Us, Arsenal Vision, the rest is football, I've listened to all the podcasts. It's a bit of a struggle to find the content that isn't just World Cup. So it's not the worst one to miss. A nice little refresh for me. I ended up actually having coffee and Parmesan fries in the afternoon. I mean, what a Monday. But I am back here on a Wednesday. As always, England are tonight. So the way this episode's going to work is the first half, we're going to hit World Cup, kind of catch up where we were since last week. Preview a little bit of the Arsenal game. My God, England game. I'm so sorry for anyone that isn't an England listener. But the second half, going to get into Arsenal. I think, maybe the conversation needs to be had around a few things. Some of the World Cup stuff is going to bring out conversations around people like Martinelli and Trossard and Declan Rice, Saka, these kind of guys, Madueke, and kind of the comments he made. And then in the second half, we'll get to all the kind of straggly bits, the fact that there's a mass exodus with our medical team, the fact that Bruno Guimaraes' transfer saga is kind of heating up, and what does that mean for some of the other players? Is it a net positive or net negative? We'll talk about that. But that's it generally. Anything else is going to kind of appear and we could talk about. I want to talk a little bit at the end about Pepe, Nicolas Pepe, believe it or not. What a throwback. Just generally speaking. So we'll start here with the World Cup. And again, if you're new to this is Gunners Rust Podcast. We talk about Arsenal. We're positively Arsenal every single week. We're sick of all the negative out there. And again, we just won the league, so there's less of it. But the reason we started this podcast was Joe, myself, and Simon Miller. We thought we want some content out there. We want to put our own content out there. It's always positive. We find the positive spin in everything that is Arsenal. And I mean, we've manifested a league title. So, I mean, jump on board now because it's only just getting started. The other thing we do is the Patreon extra episodes every single week. So click the link below. It's around £6. And also put you in a raffle to win a graded Arsenal sports trading cards. And if you've seen the Sidemen or anyone like that online, you'll know how valuable some of these cards are. So you will get a graded Arsenal card if you're picked from the hat, essentially at the end of every month on the Patreon. So join that community now. And we'll start here talking about the World Cup. So I'm going to quickly glance. We're in the knockouts now. I'm going to quickly glance at where we were at last week. I'm going to do this based on the Wednesday and not the Patreon. So last Wednesday, I swear we were getting ready for an England game last week. I can't remember for the life of me. So I'm just going to scroll back on the old Google. When we were speaking last, I'm at Friday. Oh, no. Thursday, Friday. We were at, I think we'd just watched England Ghana and we'd drawn that. So since then, England have played again. So what happened since then is we had Colombia beat Congo, Switzerland beat Canada 2-1, Bosnia beat Qatar, Morocco beat Haiti, Scotland went out 3-0 to Brazil, South Africa beat Korea 1-0, which again, from a situation where South America, I'll get there eventually, South Africa were, after game week 1, 2 red cards, a loss to Mexico. It really did feel like maybe nowhere back for them, but they made it through to the knockouts. We'll talk about that in a moment. Mexico 3-0 against Czech Republic. Ivory Coast over Curacao win. Ecuador beat Germany, which is quite something. Netherlands beat Tunisia 3-1. Japan and Sweden was a 0-0. Turkey finally got their win, and it didn't mean anything against USA 3-2. Paraguay, Australia was 0-0. And then Norway v France was 4-1 France. And if you remember, that was Norway resting 9 of their 11 starters. They accepted that they didn't need to kind of go, balls to the wall. France played their first team. More goals for Mbappe. They look really good, but I must admit, 4-1 looks great, and it is great. There was a moment, I believe, where it was 3-1. Norway had a lot of the ball. They were creating chances. They got a penalty. They missed it. They missed a couple more good chances. I just think if they had their full strength team on there, I think they score that penalty. I think they score again. They might go on to win that game. So France are really interesting because they're clearly the best team in this competition, but they do have some frailties that are yet to be exploited because that was their hardest game so far, and the other team rested. The next game was Senegal beat Iraq 5-0. Then we have Cabo Verde 0-0 with Saudi Arabia. Spain beat Uruguay 1-0, and that was a real bad tournament for Bielsa and Uruguay. Really disgraced by their way of going out. I mean, we've talked about it before, it's very difficult to go out of this competition this year. I think only, 14 teams went out of this first bit. So essentially you had to come dead last. You had to pretty much not win a game. And if you did win a game, you had to be the worst of the teams that won one game. So it's very difficult to get yourself removed as a big team. And again, they had Spain in their group, of course, but they also had Saudi Arabia and Cabo Verde. They should have done a lot better on what they did. Belgium 5-1 over New Zealand. I think I watched that when I got up with my son at like 6 a.m. Egypt, Iran was 1-1, and that was an unreal ending because Iran score a late goal to send them through. It gets VAR'd, and the VAR decision was interesting because a lot of people don't know the rule with once the goalie's out the goal, you need 2 covering players to count as a defender and a goalie. So people were very confused by that, but it was the correct decision, and unfortunately Iran did go out there. Panama, England, another very lackluster game for England there. 2-0, Jude Bellingham and Harry Kane. Who else? Bellingham really does turn up in these tournaments. But it was the conversation, and we'll get to it in a moment when we talk more about England, was that right-hand side. It was, what have we done? What mess have we created? Because when you look at the way the layout of the World Cup is this year, if we could just get this squad together and cohesive and fit, it has all the chance in the world to win a World Cup. But it just doesn't feel like it's going to happen for us. Against Panama, I think we were really lackluster in the first half, and it wasn't that they were just completely sat back like Ghana. They're not as good as Ghana. Eventually we broke them down. We got a set-piece goal again, and then Harry Kane scores. You can't turn your nose up at the fact that you win the hardest game in the group 4-2 and play unbelievably well. You draw 0-0 against a very resolute Ghana side who are a decent side in their own right, and also sat in that low block, and it happens. And then Panama 2-0 on paper looks great, but in watching it, it just felt a little very underwhelming. You kind of went away going, oh, we've got no chance. And maybe they'll turn it on now the group stages are finished, but it was a little bit unnerving. But again, to turn your nose up when you look at the likes of Uruguay going out and Spain, drawing to Cabo Verde, and certain teams losing certain games, you just think maybe we just got to accept that you can't just blow every team away like France do. The next game was obviously Croatia-Ghana. Croatia 2-1, that gets them through. Colombia-Portugal was 0-0. Congo versus Uzbekistan. Congo won 3-1 thanks to Wissa. Algeria-Austria 3-3, which is a really funny one because a draw was great for both of them. A win meant one team would go home and the team that won would play Spain. So a draw was what they needed. This is what they were desperate for. Mahrez makes it go 3-2 at 90 minutes for Algeria. And you can see, from Arnautovic and from the players even talking to Mahrez from Algeria, what are we doing? You're sending them home. We now got Spain. And as happenstance has it, Austria score immediately. Yeah, it didn't look like, they just ran it in and they allowed it. But it's just interesting that that goal happened so quickly. I'm not saying anything, but it was very interesting. But either way, they got their way. They drew 3-3 and everyone leaves happy days. Argentina, again, Messi again running away with it against Jordan, 3-1. Then we get into the knockouts. This is the round of 32 has started. I don't know how this happens. And there's been some question marks around the ordering of things. For example, South Africa, Canada, for the record, was one of the worst games I've ever watched. It felt like Sunday League. It was really bad. Canada to win it with a late goal. But why is a second team playing a second team? Isn't the point of winning the league that you get, like you get an opportunity at a second or a third team? And if you come second, yeah, you have to play a first team. And I know that it doesn't fully make sense because there's more, second and third places than there are first place, so they can't fully be a thing. But you would expect second to play third or second to play first at least, not level. Just seems odd. And it's about the only one across the board on the tournament that it does happen. So that was I found a little strange. And again, people talking about the fact that when you look at England's route to the final in a universe where everyone just wins that you expect, England would have to play Congo, but then you'd have to play Mexico, Mexico City, then you have to play Brazil or Norway. But let's say it's Brazil. Then you'd have to play Argentina's Messi's Argentina, if you will. Then the final would be against France or Spain. And then when you look at it's Spain's run, they got to play like Belgium or Portugal to get there. If you look at France, they would have to have played Holland or Morocco or Germany, any of these teams to get to that semi-final against Spain. But then when you look at Argentina and their route to the final, and you just think, oh, God, that's desperately made up for them, innit? And you do start questioning some of the ways in which the tournament was put together and how it could go. And their group was the easiest group. Then now they've got the easiest run to the semis where they'd have to play Norway, England, or Brazil or Mexico, which is their difficult one. But the other teams are having to like sharpen their tools on the way, if you know what I mean. Whereas I think Argentina can kind of walk their way to there and then save a lot of their energy that other teams aren't able to. So the way we look at that feels a bit odd. I think when you look at some of the second v second in the group, it doesn't make sense. When you look at a group like Netherlands and Sweden had, all four teams are out now. First group completely wiped out. But when you look at who they had to play, the likes of Argentina, sorry, not Argentina, they had to play, let's have a look. Netherlands had to deal with Morocco. Sweden had to deal with France. And Japan had to deal with Brazil. So they all end up out. Netherlands, Japan, and Sweden. But they didn't have a chance when you look at their group that they're all against each other, which is difficult already. But then the way it runs is that there's no layup, there's no Uzbekistan, there's no Congo. And again, I'm not saying Congo's a layup because famous last words. But when you look at what Argentina have got, I mean, this week Argentina have Cabo Verde. And again, there's a whole conversation around that team. But it just seems a little mismatched and a bit uneven as far as the way the draws worked out. And it's just ironic. It's towards Messi and Argentina. The next game was a really good game, Brazil versus Japan. Brazil win this 2-1 with a late goal from Martinelli. Japan really deserves something out of the game. I still hold my thoughts that, one, Japan are a lot better than people realise, and also that Brazil aren't as good as people think. I think we naturally see the 5 stars. I think we think of Brazil, we think of, R9 and Ronaldinho and all these people that have played there. And I think we forget that, this is a Vinicius, Cunha, Igor Thiago, Martinelli, Rafinha, Bruno Guimaraes, and again, these are all names that do mean a lot in world football, but they're not quite what we expect in the past. There's a workmanlikeness to Brazil that you don't expect as well. I think almost like a Premier League feel. They almost feel more Premier League-ish than England, I would say, in the way in which they play. But Martinelli gets that late goal, and it's really interesting. It's something that as an Arsenal fan I've not really thought about. But Ancelotti playing Martinelli in the 8 on that left side. And it's a position I've not, we've talked about Saka as an 8 or a 10. We've talked about, Wineri and Dowman, who are 10s, are playing out wide. And even Trossard as a false 9 or an 8. I dare say the only player we've not really thought about there is Martinelli. And he's played there. And he actually played really well. And he looked really good. And I think that's the evolution of football. I think, when we look back in time, you think of 4-4-2s and you think of the Christmas tree, and there's always that, in a quintessential football, some of us think of, you have an athletic player like a Rice who's up and down next to a Scholes or a Cazorla type who can kind of stand there, pivot and pick a pass from anywhere on the field like a quarterback. that's a great pairing. Whereas now there's a three, so you don't necessarily need an athlete next to a ball passer. You need a bit of a hybrid of all of them, and then you need a creator at the front. And I think over time that became where we kind of thought, oh, you have a double, you have two defensive mids, and you have a guy who could pick a pass, score a goal, a typical number 10. Then there was the world of the eights and the wingers and inverted fullbacks. We've all gone through these phases, and I think naturally we think of our 10s like an Odegaard or a Bruno Fernandes. You think of someone like James Maddison, Coutinho, someone who's, he's not necessarily an athlete, but he's got a finish. He's got a final pass. He keeps the ball moving. He's really smart. He's a playmaker. And I think there's this new era of a 10 kind of appearing in world football that are more like maybe Paqueta is someone who's like this, but I'm thinking more along the lines of Eze, Rodgers. De Bruyne was a little bit more like this. Someone who, Yaya Toure was a great example. Someone who can kind of not necessarily always pick a pass, but they can glide through the spaces and the half spaces in that eight area. Someone who can run with the ball, can move the ball, is powerful, athletic. You think of people like Joe Willock. He's not a great example of it, but someone like that, you think of his body positioning and his makeup being very different to like an Odegaard. Like Bruno Fernandes and Odegaard and Maddison standing here, you think of the way they play. I'm talking, moving that ball around, kind of getting shots, taking free kicks. Then you have these kind of, McTominay, Willock, Rodgers, Ezes, and again, none of those players are exactly the same, but their makeup is that they want to glide through the spaces. They want to actually not make the ball do the work always. They want to get shots away. They want to, push power through the lines. And I think Martinelli does actually have a little bit of the makeup of that. And I don't think I've ever thought about it before. And it's taken Ancelotti to do it for me to go, ooh, I wonder if that's maybe sent some alarm bells off in Arteta's mind of something that could be done next year. And Martinelli's a guy that we don't know if he's going to be with us. And I don't think this will change things, but I wonder if it will change things in the sense that certain games you could bring him on late, and instead of going, oh, what we do this year, we need to change it, so I guess Trossard for Martinelli. Maybe there's a position next year where you go, well, yeah, we'll bring on Martinelli and Rodgers, for example, if Rodgers ends up as an Arsenal player, or Eze, and you go, oh, who's on the left? And we usually say, well, Martinelli has to be on the left, and I guess Eze's on the interior. It's like, no, maybe we do something different. Maybe Eze goes out left and Martinelli's on the interior. Maybe you bring on them two and Rodgers, and you don't know who's the 10, who's the 8, or who's the 2 8s, and who's the winger. I wonder if it just maybe opens up more ideas and avenues. And we've seen this year with Miles Lewis-Skelly that Arteta is open to learning and kind of teaching someone a role that maybe isn't what you'd expect, but they fit it so nicely. They just need to learn a bit more about it. So it's food for thought. It's something that could be used and utilised next year. But I just thought he looked really good in there. And I think we've all kind of clamoured for him to be a centre forward at times. But it just feels like something. It feels like something that could boil up and become a thing for us. The next one was Germany went out 4-3 on penalties after a 1-1 with Paraguay. I think Germany should have won this in extra time. I don't think that's a goal. I don't know if it's a foul on the goalkeeper. I saw Klopp's comments about this. Well, if that's a foul, then Arsenal wouldn't have won the league because they scored most of their goals that way. I mean, I'm not ready to jump back into Arsenal in the league because it's so stressful. Find a goal where we touch the goalkeeper. It doesn't exist. Like this narrative is so stupid. It's so unintelligent. It's so uninformed. Show us a goal that we scored last year or any year in the last 3 years that wasn't disallowed where we touched the goalie. It doesn't exist. One time, 4 years ago, against Leicester. Touched the goalie, ball carried on, Trossard puts it in top bins, and they removed it because Ben White touched the goalie's glove. It's the only time it's happened. We do not bundle. We do running lines. We do not grab. It's blocking lines. It is so funny to watch the fact that it boils so many people in worldwide football that just have watched, seen some clips or, seen some comments online and gone, yeah, Arsenal just wrestle their way to corners and score that way because they bully everyone. No, we're just really good at corners. And like I said, find me it and I'll say, okay, yeah, fair enough. But not just to say, I said find us one goal where we scored like that and it was allowed. Doesn't exist. To say 60% of our goals were scored that way is crazy. And it's just funny also to see that Arsenal are still on people's mind during a World Cup. But Germany do lose that. Havertz does miss the penalty, unfortunately. I think he might actually score. Does he score the goal in the game? There's something telling me Havertz scored. Yeah, he scored at 54 minutes, which is cool because it's nice to see Arsenal players. I think Trossard got a brace in the week as well. But he does miss the penalty, which has been a bit of a running theme of our team in the last 2 months. But Germany go out, they crash out with a great kit. And dare I say, since 2014 when they won it, some really, really disappointing tournaments for Germany. They're very much going the way of Italy, where Italy, managed to get that Euros in between, not even qualifying around it for years. Germany seemed to make it, turn up. Everyone goes, ooh, do you know what? They look impressive. They could actually be better than we expect. And then just do something like this. And really, this because I don't think Paraguay are great. This is a team that lost 4-1 to the USA. And I'm not saying USA are awful. But you'd expect the Germans to do better than what they did. But they didn't. The other team, another team that always look great in the group stages and then somehow disappoint us, is the Netherlands. They went out to Morocco, 1-1 over the game again, similar to Germany-Paraguay, and then they lose 3-2. This is one of the funniest penalty shootouts I've ever seen. Can I see it? This is Netherlands and Morocco taking the pens. Score, miss, score. Score, miss, score. So many misses. Hakimi, Quentin Timber, Somerville, Cliver, Aniari, all miss. Koopmeiners, Rami, Veghurst, Talibi, and Siabri all score their goals. And Morocco go through. And I think Morocco are actually a very good side. So I'm glad they've got through. But it's just funny because I said at the start, that my kind of team that were going to be the worst team or the most underachieving was Netherlands. I think they were my team. And it's mainly because of the Koeman effect, but also because of just history. They don't just... sometimes England could flatter to deceive in a group and you think, nah. But then they go a couple rounds and you think, yeah. And eventually when they go out, you go, yeah, they weren't good enough. Whereas Netherlands give you this false sense of security because it's done it again to me this year. After the third game, I went, do you know what? They could have a run this year when you look at the group. When you look at the run they've got. And I was looking at Morocco and I was looking at potentially Paraguay and teams like that. And I thought, nope. Straight away out to Morocco. And again, Morocco are a very good side. So I don't want to diminish their result there. Then we're on to last night's fixtures, which was Norway beating Ivory Coast 2-1. I thought two unbelievable goals before Haaland's very average goal. But that goal from Ahmad, I've been really impressed with him, the Man United winger, in the tournament. I think he's really helped Ivory Coast. And Ivory Coast have a great history of the Toures and Zaha, Drogba. And they've had such a good team. And this now, they are looking at Nicolas Pepe, and they're looking at Gesand and some players like that. But Ahmad really took it on his shoulders to kind of be the guy, and he really was the guy. And it's just unlucky that Haaland plays for Norway and Haaland gets that goal. And I'm fairly sure he's trying to control that. But either way, it ends up in, you can see him panic that he messed that up. They end up going to, hit a drum and row in the corner, which is definitely going to be ingrained in our brains from this World Cup, seeing, people talk about USA 94 and, all these kind of things. And there's certain imagery you have, and maybe Roberto Baggio hitting a post and these kind of things. I think now you're going to have that group doing that row around Times Square, and the fans, that is, and then the players doing it on the pitch with that drum and Odegaard hitting the drum. So I think it's really good World Cup fodder. The next game was France-Sweden. Really interesting game, actually, because Mbappe gets 2 more, puts him level with Messi now, and I think he's only a couple goals behind now, all-time World Cup goals. And he's done it about 14, 15 less appearances. So crazy to think. And again, this goes towards that conversation I was having the other day, which was, when you think of Pele, you think of him internationally, more so than club. He had a good club career, but he had an unbelievable international career. I wonder if Mbappe is almost one of them types. He's going to go down as an international legend. And again, his career's been great, club. but he does seem to miss out on maybe a European trophy, or he moves to the wrong team at the wrong time and doesn't win the league, or he's still having a better career than 99% of top flight players. But this could be a third back-to-back final. I don't see them not making the final. He scored a hat trick in a final. He could break all the records. And when you watch him, he's just alive. Like, he looks more alive than he does at club level. I mean, there's like a Mbappe cam they showed yesterday. The movement off and the little sprints and the little like dropping the shoulder and jukes and jiving, and it's mad to watch when you think of. And I'm a big Gyökeres defender, even Haaland. When you watch them off the ball and the speed they're moving, it is fast at times, but the way he's moving is like the 90th minute, and he's like dropping into a sprint and then stopping and then running backwards and sprinting again, and just to kind of knock the defenders off, off their kind of balance, basically. And you do think of Omri, the comparisons are so similar. But he's electric. He's a player that is just so much better than I think we even realise yet. And he's lighting up the whole World Cup already, and he doesn't turn down a big occasion. He gets two more. Brady Barcola, another one who's getting a couple goals underneath there with Dembele, picks up the other one. But they win that 3-0. Sweden, as much as they weren't in that game, and I thought France were unbelievable, they had a few good chances. And again, similar to the Norway game, if they went a bit harder there, I think they get it. And France seemed to be capping out at 3-4 goals kind of thing. But I feel like they could ship 3 or 4 goals against a top team. Ironically, obviously, they ended up playing a rotated Norway. They played a very poor Sweden side that did ship 5 goals in their last group game. Oh, the second to last group game. But it looks like next France will have Paraguay. They then might face Morocco or Canada. And you just think, as far as potent, proper, top-level team, you could be waiting until the semis against Spain or Portugal. Then they might have to deal with like England or Mexico or Brazil or Argentina. But it feels like they're kind of managing to... No fault of their own either. Like, this is... Argentina have got the rub of the green completely. France is one just... teams removing themselves, because I'd like to have seen Holland versus France. I think that would be a really good game, lots of goals, and I'd like to have just seen a team that were going to go at them and not back down, and I'd be really interested to see how that looks. But it doesn't look like we're going to get it for a minute. I do think Morocco is a tough one for them, but I don't think we're going to get it quite yet. Mexico win 2-0 and against Ecuador. Hincapié getting sent off in the 95th minute for the old covering the mouth straight red card. I hope there's nothing more to that story. It's just a red. But the way the Mexico guy reacts, I don't like. It worries me. He doesn't look happy. And it doesn't look like he's... Like in the Paraguay one with Almiron, I feel like the guy spotted his mouth was covered and like tried to get him sent off. This is the 95th minute. The game's won. He's not really looking at Hincapié. And then he starts like shouting at the ref. And you just think, what has he said to make him do that? So I'm interested, obviously, what comes of that. I hope nothing ridiculous. But either way, he gets sent off. 2-0 Mexico. They still haven't conceded. I think that's 3-0, 2-0, 1-0, 2-0. That puts them against us or Congo next. And then the winner of that will play Brazil or Norway. The only games we've got announced for the round of 16 are Canada, Morocco, Paraguay, France, Brazil, Norway. Mexico against to be confirmed. That will be, if England were to get through, 1 a.m. next on Sunday / into Monday, I believe. So that would be interesting. Yeah. And then today we've got a couple games. We've got 3 games today. England, Congo, Belgium, Senegal, USA, Bosnia. I think USA will win. I think Belgium will win. And I think the Belgium-Senegal one could be a draw, penalties. But I think Belgium will go through. England, Congo. It's going to be really interesting because we've made such a hash of this right-hand side. We've taken... And again, I'm very keen on Saka. I like Madueke. I was someone who thought Bowen should go instead of Tony, just as another option. And my theory on that was, if Saka can't play 90 minutes, Bowen's someone you can just trust over like 70 minutes before you bring someone on. Madueke is not a guy that is going to give you the best 75 minutes of his life like Bowen. He might be more electric than Bowen, but Bowen's just a lot more steady, a lot closer to what Saka does. And Madueke, in his own words, when he's talking about how happy he was to hear that Martinelli scored the winner. He actually talked about Saka and him, and he said he thrives in space, Saka thrives in congestion. And I think it's a really good way of analysing it, and it's very true. And Bowen's someone who is similar to Saka. He thrives in that kind of, let's get involved, let's kind of make some passes, let's look for something. Whereas Madueke wants that space to run into that maybe against low blocks you're not going to get. So if Saka can't play, and we've got just one right-hand side player that wants to run into space that isn't there, and then behind him we've got Reece James, who's an unbelievable football player, can pick a pass. But we all know his hamstrings are made of brisket at this point. We knew this could happen. And we didn't. We took Livramento. When he got injured before, we had to call someone up. We called up a centre-back to say, oh no, now Konza can play right-back, which is where we want him to play. And you sit here going, what? Like, Dan Burns there? This isn't. Yeah, and again, I'm going to preface this with Digne was playing at fullback for France yesterday, so I don't think a fullback is going to dictate whether you win the World Cup or not. But that side could, because Reece James and Saka is an elite right hand side. Madueke and Konza is not. Then Konza rolls his ankle. He's out for a couple games. Reece James isn't training. What do we do? And again, it looks like Saka for the group. Now the group stage was coming to an end. It looks like maybe he's ready to start giving us 60, 70 minutes, which is, one thing. And I thought he was really good in the sense that he was in the right places. He was creating a lot. But his end product was very poor, very rusty. Rice didn't play due to the back tightness and the nerve damage he's got, which is another massive worry. And again, I think if I've seen Paul Scholes saying that he'd pick Elliot Anderson over Rice, I think that's nonsense. I mean, I watched that game the other day and I thought it really exposed Anderson for what he is. I think at a World Cup level, Champions League final level, any kind of level like that, you put Declan Rice in the 6. We've seen him do it. He bosses a game. He gets around. He does his job. He's correct. He's steady, and he does it all. Elliot Anderson was getting knocked off the ball. He was getting pushed around. He won the ball a lot. He lost the ball a lot. He didn't play badly, but you could just see, the boys v the men type feeling when you do that kind of comparison. And if Rice isn't going to be able to play, and it is going to be a singular 6, I think we can't play maybe 2 10s. I think you need someone like a Mainu to come in. So that's going to be interesting. I think early doors, my feeling on the right-hand side is you bring Stones and Gahey as the centre-back pairing. You play Konza, not Kwanzaa. Konza, the Villa player, at right-back. Because he's a player that, under Southgate, played right-back a lot. I think at Villa he's played it a tiny bit. He's not ideal. Again, we're playing a player out of position. But I prefer that to the conversation around Declan Rice moving to right-back. So, for me, I would go Pickford, O'Reilly, Stones, Gahey, Konza today. The midfield, I'd go Rice, Anderson, Bellingham again. I'd go Saka, Rashford and Kane. I don't think you take any kind of chances. I don't think you make a bold decision to put Watkins in for Kane or anything. I don't think you go Rodgers and Eza inside instead of Bellingham. I think Bellingham, you've got to go with the hot hand. He loves the tournament. Maybe you do the opposite of Anderson and Rice. You do Rice on his own with maybe Rodgers as the left 8. Maybe Mainu, like I said earlier, when one of them's not available. Someone who's going to, bridge the gap between the two. But that's what I would go with. Congo, decent side. I think Wissa's the guy. And I had a really good analogy from my friend Lewis, Elton Prince of WWE. He's been on the show before. He said what's so amazing about international football, because a lot of people give it a lot of pelters and it's not as good as club and all this, and I understand that. But what he was saying was what's great is like when you have like Arsenal versus Southampton, it's quite clear that the champions of England are against a lesser opponent. But international football is like doing that and going, it's Arsenal versus Southampton, but Southampton have De Bruyne and Haaland, or Odegaard and Haaland, and you go, oh yeah, that's a bit of a leveler. And you're like, oh no, the next game is Chelsea versus Wrexham. I don't know why I'm announcing all the quarterfinals from the FA Cup last year. But Wrexham actually have Mbappe up front. You're like, what? Do you know what I mean? It's things you would never see in club football. Because you do get these teams. Like you look at Congo and we think of Wissa. And you look at Ivory Coast, you're looking at Pepe and you're looking at Ahmad. You look at Norway, Haaland and Odegaard. Some of these teams, almost like you see 2 or 3 players, you go, wow, they're unbelievable. You don't know the other players. Maybe that's my naivety, but that's what makes international football so fun, I think, and unpredictable, because they are real levelers, because they're not just good players, they're like unbelievable players in a team that maybe aren't the best. It just kind of just makes you think about it, puts a cat amongst the pigeons, as they say. But that's been the World Cup roundup. Other than that, not much going on. It's exciting now that we're at the knockouts, because we can actually start seeing some stuff happen, and things changing, and games meaning something. You start to realize in that group stage that you were kind of watching for no real reason, because no one cared. The players didn't care. They were through or they were out, or it didn't matter because of the new format. So something they got to look at, I think, going forward, because it did become very like, doesn't matter. Whereas it does now, and for the players to go from it does matter to it doesn't matter to it really does matter is going to be interesting. And I think that might be what's actually caught out teams like the Netherlands and Germany, was going through those kind of mental challenges. But it's nice to see. It does mean a lot, because England, for example, against Congo, you expected to win. It's win or they are completely disgraced and embarrassed. And that's nothing against Congo. It's just the way the media will spin it. And it should, and rightly so, because they are ranked much higher. That those nerves play a factor. Congo got nothing to lose. It's an unbelievable game. Great knockout moment for them. I can't imagine they've had many knockout games at the World Cup, if any. But England got it all to lose. You lose that and everyone goes, oh. And then like Mexico, if we can get through, that is alarm bells, because that is hard. They're probably the most informed team outside of France. It's at their home ground. But if you go out, people think that's embarrassing. But it's a game that's not a given. It's not Uzbekistan. It's not something like that. And again, not also diminishing them. It's a much easier game than Mexico. But we'll get to that next week if England can get through Congo. So exciting to see that. 5 o'clock, lovely time to watch a bit of football on a Wednesday. And we'll move into some Arsenal chatter, because I mentioned earlier actually I'll get first into the Pepe. I think it's really interesting conversation that players nowadays, I think, are getting away with a lot more as far as stats. So Nicola Pepe joined Arsenal for 74 million, and that was a huge moment. It was our biggest purchase to date. Still our second biggest ever transfer, I believe. And he played right wing at Arsenal before Saka kind of took it from him. And Saka at that point was on the left, and he kind of moved and ended up taking his position. But he was notoriously known across the league as a flop. Javinho was a player before him that genuinely was a bit of a flop. But when you look back at Pepe, it's really interesting, because I'm just going to pull up some stats. For Man City, Doku, in all comps, has played 21, 26, and then 90. He's played 114 games for Man City in all comps. He has 15 goals in that time. The assists are not bad. They are 24. But that goal tally there is 15 goals. 15 goals is so mad. I think that is, so 15 goals and however many assists it was, 12 assists, was it? 16, 24 assists. But that is really alarming. And then you look at, for example, I'm going to look at Somerville, because I'm trying to pick players that are a similar position, but also play a similar amount of time as Pepe. And again, this is a player that Doku highly rated, Somerville being talked about as someone who could potentially get a big money signing. I'm talking 60, 70 million. He's only played 52 games for West Ham. He scored 6 goals. He's got 3 assists. At Leeds, probably a better option. He had 46 games. He got 20 goals. That was in the Championship. And then no goals in any other cup. So in total with West Ham and Leeds, he's played 100 games and he has 26 goals, but a lot of them coming in the Championship. Now let's have a look at Pepe. And the reason I'm using those is purposely done. How do they not have the Arsenal? At Arsenal. Stats. At Arsenal. So they have them for everywhere else. Villarreal is very similar numbers to Doku, but I'm just gonna. I thought that would actually come up straight away. So at Arsenal, it was 3 seasons. He played 80 games. He played a total of 80 games. How many goals? My God, this is hard to figure out. Where's transfer marked when you need it? Do you know what I mean? I'm going back. I'm getting transfer marked up because I feel like I'm not making my point otherwise. At Arsenal, he did 112 appearances, which is, what was it, 3 less than Doku at City. He scored 27 goals in all comps, and he got 21 assists. So Doku got 24 and 15 goals. So the combined difference is 9. Pepe got 9 more. He was considered a massive flop at Arsenal. And then Doku is considered very good, very high end. Somerville's been touted at similar prices, and he's really not proved it. And then you look at Elanga stats across his career. At Newcastle, 32 games, 0 goals, 1 assist. He played 10 in Champions League, got 2 goals. So for Newcastle, he's got 3 goals in 52 appearances. It's a similar price point. And then Newcastle and Forest, he got 11 goals in 80 appearances with 20 assists. So that's actually not too bad, that part. But again, neither of them hold a candle to Pepe. And it really does make you think, are we holding players to a different standard now? And again, I know money goes up. When you look at Elliot Anderson, I think them taking him on now is very reminiscent of City. This is taking him on now is very reminiscent of when we took on Rice in his development. I think he has a similar projection. So playing that money and paying 10 more million up front, but maybe 30 million or 25 million pound more overall, that could just be inflation of 3-4 years ago. But then you look at, the Elanga, Madueke, Somerville market is very similar to the Pepe market. And at the time, not only did people think, because if a team took on a guy like Pepe and he did the goals he got at Arsenal and assists, I think he'd be considered a roaring success. Because I didn't even get into Garnacho. I didn't get into Ahmad. I haven't got into, who is the other winger? Byron Gittins. Players like that are highly touted and taken for very similar money. And they're not considered, they are, I would say, Garnacho, Neto, and particularly Byron Gittins, that they are seen as flops. Again, it might also be the toxicity of the club. Arsenal were in a toxic moment when that happened, and he wasn't going to, plaster over any giant wounds with those kind of numbers. So he took a brunt of it. Whereas I think when City had Doku, they're still winning leagues. It doesn't really matter what Doku's doing. He's fun to watch. Whereas if Pepe joined Arsenal right now, like Madueke, he does still get pelters, but he's also just fun to watch at times because we're still winning the league, It's not really a problem. Whereas if we sold Saka and brought in Madueke, I can guarantee you, even if he scored 20 goals, look no further than Gyökeres. For the money we bought him compared to Sesko, compared to a lot of players in this league that came in the last 12 months or 24 months, he got more goals. He got more goals than Isaac. He got more goals than Sesko. He's done these things in his first year, and everyone still goes, not for me. And it's the perfect example of when we highlight players from different countries that maybe the eye test is better. And I understand football is about eye tests. Ronaldinho is an unbelievable example of that. But Arsenal fans wanting Gyökeres out for Alvarez, and we all got to pay 60 million plus Gyökeres for a guy who works that hard. We saw how hard he works for Sweden. He got 21 goals in his debut season. He got 5 assists. Julian Alvarez last year scored 7 goals in La Liga, 8 goals in La Liga, sorry, but he got 10 in the Champions League. When you put all his goals together, he got 19 goals, 2 less than Gyökeres. He's going to play in a similar position. So what we need from him is goals. He's not going to play as the 10. He's not going to sit in behind Havertz. He's not going to take Odegaard or Eze or Rodgers or any of these people that might be there or are there's job. He's going to play as a number 9. If Gyökeres goes, it'll be him or Havertz as the 10, as the 9, sorry. So he has to deliver that many goals. So in a lesser league, with more experience, he managed to get less goals than Gyökeres last year. And I just think that's really like the perfect kind of thing to show to someone. And, when people sit here and go, oh, I want Rodgers, someone we've watched do it in the Premier League. And I'm not saying that's the be all and end all, but no, we want Barcola. It's like, okay, and I really like Barcola. But what did he do last year? It's the same example as Kvaratskhelia scored 7 goals in Liga last year. Sometimes things don't translate. The eye test or the branding of players sometimes supersedes the actual player. And I think it's something we've got to keep an eye on this transfer window, because the market is distorted because of the Elliot Anderson. We're looking at Fernandes going from West Ham for 85 million to Spurs. Spurs were looking to spend 100 million on Tonali. The benefit of all of this is it does feel like maybe the Tonali ship has sailed for every team. We looked at him, we got priced out. Man United looked at him, got priced out. Spurs were happy to pay it. Man United went for Fernandes. Spurs saw that and thought, you know what, 21-year-old, 85 million less money, we'll take him. Spurs went, nah, we'll have him. Spurs have gone for it. That makes you feel like Tonali's ship has ran on this transfer window. He's gone back. And I don't think Newcastle are in a position where they can afford to sell both him and Bruno Guimaraes. So Bruno Guimaraes to Arsenal has now been made more public. And we did make a verbal bid of around 55 million. And it's been declined, and they said that he is not for sale. And I understand that, but no football player is not for sale. And I think that is something you say to kind of drive a price up. They will sell one of them because financially, and again, we can have arguments about why can Spurs, they're on track to spend about 300 to 400 million this summer. A team that comes 17th 2 years in a row. How can they sit here and spend 400 million and not have to sell any of their major players when Newcastle, the richest club in the world, still have to keep selling players to get by? They've already sold Gordon. They might have sold Guimaraes. They might have sold Tonali. They've sold Isaac in recent history. They're having to get rid of these players, and they can't really bring anyone of note in. They're going to the Bundesliga and Liga to go get replacements. Why Aston Villa, who are in the Champions League, almost have to, PSR-wise, sell Rodgers or at a huge asset and not really replace him? Why do those teams have to do that, but then Tottenham do it? And I know that the real reason is Tottenham have a giant brand new stadium that is in central London. They fill out every single week. They also fill it every single week with concerts all year. They're a giant team in London. They have a history of having people like Bale there, Modric, that has kind of driven up some kind of interest. They have been in Europe. They won the Europa Cup last year. I know Villa won it this year. But a mixture of all those things allows them that money, that Aston Villa and Newcastle do not have. And Newcastle, for example, coming out of Europe again, every time they go forward, they take a step back. Maybe they need to move on for their manager. I genuinely believe their owners are going to move on because they can see that if they went to like a Monaco or a Juventus or somewhere, they might actually be able to spend their money immediately because they're bringing in a certain amount of money that allows them to do it. Whereas Newcastle, this is going to take 20 years. And this does go back to, how did Man City get away with it? Well, they finagled their books, got away with it for 10 years, and that's where they are now. That's why they have to pay the price. Because we're seeing what happens if you don't. Because it would have taken them 25 years to be where they were 10 years ago for Man City. So they've saved 15 to 20 years in their building. Whereas Newcastle aren't going to be allowed to because they're a lot more stringent now. So a lot of these things are kind of interesting. West Ham, I believe, need to recoup about 150 million. I think if they sell Fernandes and Somerville, again, the reason I was talking about Somerville, they'll probably recoup that. Add in a Mavropanos, but keep Bowen. They'll be fine, and they'll bring on some free agents from the Premier League, I'm sure, to kind of bolster the squad. But it does make you wonder, and the market is getting a bit skewed, because I think Madueke is a £40 million player, so is Elanga, but the Elanga signing, ironically from Newcastle, had a knock-on effect to what Somerville's going to be worth this year. Because I just looked at his stats, it's not worth the amount that we're saying. Because on those numbers, you could sell Winery for 75 million. But if we do, we're going to sell him for 30 million with a buyback clause. And it does make you wonder, but the market in general, it's the same with when you look at anything, stocks, trading cards. If Logan Paul buys, for example, a Saka 1 of 1 today for 4 million, every Saka 1 of 1 goes from being $3,000 to $1 million at least, and every numbered card goes from being £5 to £15 to being 150 quid, and every base card is worth maybe £1, if if it's in a batch of 5, all become 10 15 quid. Same when Yamal's money went skyrocketing, same when Bawadi now is going skyrocketing. Talking to Bawadi, City are interested, and it does scream of just bad things when you hear that they're going to pay 115 million up front for Anderson, and then also take on Bawadi at around 75 million, and he's going to be a backup to that group they've got there of Kovacic, Rodri, Anderson, and the rest of them, Reinders and whoever else. And it does make you realise that, they're going to just spend out close to 200 million on 2 midfielders, one in which won't play very much, while under investigation for sports washing. And it does, I couldn't imagine how much that boils you if you're a Newcastle or a Villa fan right now, and you're thinking, wait a second, we haven't done anything wrong and we cannot spend. So there's definitely something broken in the system, and it does I think it concerns me a little bit long term for football. But yeah, it's something that needs to be addressed, and I'm really interested when the World Cup finishes what happens with City. The fixtures have been announced, so I assume they're not being relegated, but I wonder if there is a point deduction. Another thing I'm wondering about is this a year for Arsenal to go back-to-back? Because when you look around, the teams that could compete, that we expect anyway, Man United, brand new manager in Carrick. I know he did just under half a season with Man United, but he's a new manager. We haven't seen him get a whole season, especially with Europe. City are finally out their Pep world, could have a deduction, taking on Maresca, who might be dealing with the loss of Rodri in their midfield, gaining an Elliot Anderson, which is a massive, signing. But I wonder. Chelsea with a brand new manager in Alonso, and looking at Granit Xhaka, which is, I must admit, it does hurt a little bit. It really hurts the Sunderland fans because he kind of promised to be staying there. Who else is there? There is Liverpool, new manager, Areola, losing Salah. Van Dijk's on his last legs. That midfield needs reshaping. Very good manager, though, but a very new manager to a club like Liverpool. Then you got Spurs, brand new manager, spending a lot of money, but a brand new manager. And you do just look and go, if ever Arsenal have never gone back-to-back, if we're ever going to go back-to-back, isn't this the kind of season to kind of go, all right, let's go get Bruno Guimaraes, let's go get Rodgers or Barcola or someone, and let's not sell massive. Let's sell a couple, accept it, try and win it back-to-back, because we're on the cusp of Arsenal history. And I don't think you have another year where the other quote-unquote big six, the other five, have brand new managers. And you have a manager that's been there 6.5 years. And we've just won the league for the first time in 22 years. So I do think this is a moment for us to kind of capitalise on. Something that is happening, though, and we talk about Arteta and his fine margins and looking for those little margins to get better. And I do think that's what's happening here with the medical team. We talked about, completely lost his name, but our head of medical left. But it looks like now the whole team is going. There's a massive clear out going and a brand new team going in. I do think that has to be to do with the last 2 years. The amount of injuries cost us 2 years ago, nearly cost us this year. When you look at what's going on right now with Saliba needing back surgery, Rice needing back surgery, Saka can't hardly play a game. These are three of our, if not the biggest assets at the club, and they are struggling to get by. And you just think, yeah, he's looking at what could take us to another level. Maybe people being fit would help. But it's such a deep cause, isn't it? I think we all naturally look at like maybe a doctor and go, oh, that's the problem. It could be the training style. It could be doctors are not being harsh enough with telling Arteta, you have to leave him out a week. Is it the opposite? Are they trying to stop Arteta? And that's what Arteta wants, more control to be able to go, no, they can play through that. I don't know. So there's more to it. I don't think this is a fix that will just instantly be like, oh, okay, look, no one gets injured now. It's just not expected. But I do think he's trying to improve another. I think he got us to like 90%, and then he found like a toughness. There's 1%. Then he found set pieces. There's another percent. He found kind of dealing with the ghosts of Christmas past, if you will, with getting through certain rounds of certain club cups. There's another percent. He's winning league. There's 2 more%. He's slowly getting us towards that 100%, but he's at a point where it's not just we need a new winger or we need a new new goalie. Like he's done all that. We're now at like, is the medical team right? Is that pitch right? He's changed, like, for example, the tunnel at the Emirates. He's changed the way the announcer says people's names. He's given us a song. It's all these little 1%. And I feel like he's, when you're trying to complete a game like GTA, and you've done everything. You've done over a major mission, side missions, all that. But there's a couple of things you've got to do. He's ungraded the map. He's done all the big missions. He's done the side missions. He's done all the different variations. Now he's just got to collect the last couple of bits. But he's now having to look introspectively and go, what is it that we could use to give us the best opportunity to be 100% best team in the world and win it all? And I think he's in that hunt currently. And he's doing it because this is something you can do when you don't have any players. Luckily, we're getting Hincapi and Havertz back, Gyökeres. They're all going to be on a beach as of tomorrow, I'm sure. So in 2 weeks' time, when it's mid-July, they'll be getting ready for the pre-season, which is good because that'll be a month before the Community Shield on the 16th of August and 5 weeks before the start of the season. The longer these players stay, so every day now I'm watching a team lose. I'm looking ahead already at the World Cup. Let me have a look at the players that we hope could be leaving soon. Obviously, as an Englishman, I hope England stay. Could do with Senegal knocking out Belgium. Let's get Trossard back. And if he needs to leave, let's get a price for him because he's home. We got Spain, Austria. Love Spain out. Get Reyes, Zubimendi, Moreno. Get them all back. Portugal, Croatia. Other than that, we're not got too many players still out. They're wrapped up a lot in France, Brazil, and England, and Norway. So at least one of them will be back next week in Norway or Brazil, and England could be back next week or tonight. So maybe we're getting close to having our team back, and they can actually have 2-3 weeks off rest before preseason starts again. Because I'm starting to get a bit worried. We could be starting a league season with a very interesting team for a few weeks. But time will tell. And we'll be back, obviously, as always, next Monday and Wednesday. I will not miss it. And at the end of the week on Patreon. So I'll be kind of keeping you up to date with World Cup, Arsenal transfers, Arsenal news. On the Patreon, I like to also do little things like, let's just name my perfect at Arsenal 11, or who was the most underrated player of the 90s. I'll do all these kind of things. So go check out the Patreon for all that kind of extra Arsenal content in your ears all week. It costs about £6, but it does put you in a raffle to win a graded Arsenal card every single week. And we don't have many Patrons yet. So if you jump in there, you're very likely to win an Arsenal graded card. So it's well worth the £6. So go jump the Patreon. Check out SeatGeek, TBA Wrestling, whatnot, £10 credit. Come watch one of our streams. We're doing a lot of breaks and a lot of single shows coming up. And you can spend £10 for free on one of those shows, Peppercorn Sports Cards. So check us out on all those things. And I'll be back on Monday and Wednesday. See you on the Patreon. Bye-bye.